No, I am not. What number am I thinking about between 33 and 55? That number was 46, and Andy French got it. By default, they're going to be 5-minute games unless you say otherwise. I will play faster time controls if you'd like. Here we go. The English copycat variation. Okay. Is he going to declare one of these pawns? Okay, well. What's this pawn going to do now? 1 or 2 steps? I'm going to go with this. I'm going to look to go with this typical idea of getting in a3, b4. Essentially, trying to converge my light square bishop and rook on that b7 square. So let's get rolling. I also like to, many times in the English, to maintain my central pawns at their in their home squares. Retain the flexibility. If this pawn goes again, well, clearly there's been time lost, and this is actually worth considering. Maybe this plan isn't so great. I would need 2 moves. Well, yeah, a3, rook here, pawn push. It could be prevented with a5, but that's not without allowing me to camp out on b5 for a while. My concern is that is my opponent going to just strike in the center and make this plan look silly, a3, b4? I could just go with d4 and still, I'm pretty sure, claim some advantage. I'm going to try that. Because you know what? I see that this bishop is going to be problematic for black. Especially with this bishop already on its long diagonal. Trying to fianchetto is going to be quite difficult. And notice after the recapture, there's already an issue on c6. So something like this, I think, would fail to knight to b5, and then d6 starts to get hammered. Additionally, I could put more fuel on it, and I might want to now transition, or I might want to now focus my attention on this d6 point. So knight here, I think will eventually force my opponent to have to play e5, and I'm seeing a strategical, I don't know if you'd say win, but this is, I think, going to be a very difficult situation now for black, because you could defend d6. Okay, that wasn't being defended, but even if it was, bishop d6 induces this advance, although maybe knight there would be available. I was thinking e5 would be needed, and then I would go to g5, take out this knight, and then jump into this square, but now I'm just netting a pawn and the bishop pair. So, this is going to be trouble, right? Right or wrong? Is there any compensation? There isn't. My queen cannot hang around here. My opponent has to simplify the position, and that's something I'm completely welcome to. Queen e7, I think I do best to just develop. Why not? Just develop. Okay, and now I could place my opponent in a pin. Queen takes, knight takes, bishop here. My opponent will get out of it. Is there any good follow-up? I could also grab that pawn. Maybe I want to do that. I'm going to go for that. Pin the knight first. After rook here, after I've tied my opponent up just a little bit, only then will I grab here. Rook here would be forced, as otherwise rook d8 is met with bishop to c7, and then I get the exchange. So I could pick off another pawn. There is no rook b8 to grab the heart of my queenside structure. Of these three, this guy is without him, these guys become very weak, both isolated. So rook a7 is only, and now I'm going to drop back, not all the way. Is there anything better? Let's just go here, so I negate this knight. Maybe he would want to make use of g4, at least this is ruled out. And if my king is ever in check, I just bump up to g2. So I'm looking to just simplify the position now. Bishop here, rook c7, I end up dropping c4. I don't want this knight to play here. That's going to be awkward for my light square bishop, so I think I can just preserve my dark square bishop and just get all my pieces working. That's it. Rook f to d1. I already have a flight square. My opponent is still needing to spend some time to get a flight square. This is the passed pawn on c4. Can I just get him pushing right away? Maybe I probably could, but I like to actually just keep these guys strung together in a2 through c4 structure, and just get on the d file, pile up on the d. Not much else beyond that. What are my opponent's candidate moves? This rook is frozen, actually. These bishops are crushing this rook. That's tough. Okay, so my knight is a little bit loose, okay, but my bishop's there to defend, so this is intact. I guess the only way to be a bit disruptive is to try, I don't know, would you call it a minority attack? A5, A4. If I don't have to worry about any of my pawns, then my opponent really is just not going to have anything. I guess F6 is being prepped. Bishop back, E5, and then this knight has an outpost. I don't really like that. I don't like that. Hang on here, let's not fall back on the clock. Actually, no, I was just thinking I could go here and this bishop is unprotected. That's not true. Okay, I'm just going to do this. And in response to F6, I'm just going to give that bishop up. I'm okay with this. This is probably the best, or, well, how should I say it? This is the knight that I want to make sure does not jump into this square. Still up 2 pawns, no need to get crazy. I like to just play these positions out where I don't have to calculate. I don't have to go through these. I don't want to, I'm trying to just keep control over the position. Maybe that's the way to say it. Don't let it get out of hand. In fact, pawn push, I could take the bishop and then follow up with the bishop to g4 with the skewer. That would just be simplifying things more. So I'm going to take this and now just jump in, pin the knight. Don't have to worry about that tricky knight. And now this idea, this idea of a5, a4 stuff that I was speaking of a little bit ago, it's no longer available. Form that battery. Last piece involved. It's no longer there. My knight's always there to just jump into a4. So there's no activity for the rooks in this knight. Just having a tough day. So, there is the possibility for a knight here interfering with the communication of the pieces. Okay. How do I make progress? How about I just calmly play back and avoid any trouble? It's not really going to matter, but I'm just going here to make sure everything's connected. In fact, in this position right here, everything is protecting everything. I'm looking for a king improvement at this point. Alright, let's get my pawn rolling. Get my king to e3 or d3. We might have a knight ending. Let's go for it. King. Time to move with the king. Ooh, let me make sure I stop this king. If he was getting here, he would have 2 entry points, so I want to just shoulder that king off. Pawn push, I don't know if I even want to capture. I'll probably just push that knight away and then push up. Okay, so I'm fine in a king and pawn endgame. This is just a winning king and pawn endgame. Again, I'm still up these 2 pawns. So this guy's going to get rolling. No way to stop that. Inch by inch. And I could actually just let those guys sit and come over in this direction. Many different ways to go about victory. So now this is going to be a target. I want to put pressure on that. Okay, I want to open stuff up. Almost like it's a rook. Open up some files. Open up some squares, really. Excuse me. And then there's nothing to do. Okay. Good game, Andy. Let's back up and try and take something away from this quickly. Okay, so what's the first thing that jumped out at me? Hmm. I think this turns out to be a favorable structure for me. Being able to eventually play against d6, which fell in the game. The majority of the game was played where my opponent was down the pawn, so I'm drawn back to the points leading up to that pawn falling, of course. And so I actually question a little bit the decision to make a pawn move at this stage. I've seen... Here's an interesting deployment of this king knight. I've seen, instead of... hang on for a second. What did you do? Okay, you didn't end up doing a kingside fianchetto, but that's certainly something you could be doing. You could still be going with... I was going to say you could still be going with the copycat game, as if like I'm already on this square, but nevertheless, you could be going with the kingside fianchetto, and you could be looking to reroute this king knight to the d4 square. Now, how could you do that? Look at consider this line here: g6, bishop g7, with knight h6 to f5. He's sidelined for just a moment, but once he's on f5, he's contributing to central control in a great way, and he is also staying clear of your bishop on that long diagonal. So it's just at least another setup you could look to implement. Again, g6, bishop g7, and play knight h6 to f5. I'm somehow reminded of a game between Luke McShane and who was playing white against... I just can't remember. Does anybody know? I think there was a pretty popular game. Luke McShane... It wasn't against Magnus Carlsen, was it? Does anybody recall like this sort of opening where Luke's opponent played knight h6 and there was this d4 advance and Luke ended up giving up his bishop or something? Does that ring a bell? I don't know. I'm looking in the chat right now to see. It might have... Okay, so there's maybe... there's a thought at least from Feynman Dirac that it was Kramnik. I can't remember. It might have been him, but I know it was against a strong player, so it could have certainly been Vladimir Kramnik. But in any event, it's another thing to look into. Knight h6 again looks very awkward, but knight h6 to f5, and you're really keying in on that d4 square. It's not the only way you could go, but again, just a little bit of insight about another setup. You could also just play e5 here and try to cover this, cover that. Try and make sure that this. Well, no. This I don't know if you want to really give up that d5 square so easily. As soon as you do e5, that's weakened. So maybe you could just go with the kingside fianchetto. Yeah, maybe that's better than this e6 advance. Look into this move even at this stage instead of e6. I think e6 is now going to again allow me to have a nice structure, and even if you're able to defend this pawn, I think it's very troublesome. Again, queen b8, bishop here. If you move the pawn, you give me this square, light square issues you have, and you might be needing to do something like knight to e5. I'm just not quite sure. It seems very uncomfortable for black right here, because of this d pawn on a half open file that starts to become a big issue. That's really the main point, because right from here it's just a matter of technique. I mean, I ended up netting another pawn. I don't know that there was really an opportunity to capitalize on the moves I was making once I was up some material. Okay. I've said, I believe, more than enough on that game. So again, good one, Andy. Let's close.